So kudos to the Bucks for not going down too easy to Miami. But they did go down in 5 games. There's a massive disappointment. And the obvious question is, what happens with Giannis? Well, they're going to offer him the super max this offseason. If he does not accept it, then the circus begins pretty much. Now, that's not a guarantee that he's going to want out, but then the rumors are really going to be going off, and we've already heard little things about Miami, some things about Dallas, 2 teams who have not exactly made it a secret about what season they're choosing to have cap space for, or what off season, if you will. And when you think about Giannis and you just think about his personality and the way that he doesn't like being friends with other players around the league and whatever else, it suggests that he has a bit of that mentality of like, I'm just going to stick with my guys, I like where I am, and that's that. Like, he kind of reminds me a bit of like Damian Lillard's energy, with just the idea of like, if I'm not going to win a title here, then it's not going to happen. So, for what all that's worth. But at the same time, you never really know with this stuff. I mean, it's not very easy to do now, but if you can search hard enough, you can find people denying the hell out of like, oh, Anthony Davis isn't going to want out of the Pelicans, or Gordon Hayward isn't going to want to leave the Jazz, or Paul George isn't going to want to leave Indiana. Stuff happens, man. So I think now there is pressure on the Bucks front office for a few things. I mean, I mentioned Coach Bud when I did my reaction to them going down 3-0, and I mean, it's kind of a fascinating situation. I mean, Giannis would not want Bud fired. Giannis was willing to fight for Jason Kidd to keep his job as the Bucks coach, so he's definitely not going to fight to get Budenholzer fired. And you could suggest that just do whatever Giannis wants us to do, and that's that. And again, it is still kind of crazy to think that you really would give up on Budenholzer, but we've seen him get outcoached in this series. We saw it against Nick Nurse, and I mean, the thing there, though, is like, who else would be the guy? I mean, you'd have to be extremely confident in whoever you were going to bring in, and there's a chance that they would fire Bud and we'd all be on board with it. Oh yeah, Giannis will finally play like 40-something minutes in a playoff series, and then they're not as good in the regular season, and now we're all playing the game of like, wait a minute. So I'm just saying, like, let's not just jump on the whole, if we fire Coach Bud, everything will get fixed train. Although, once again, yes, he's proven that he's not in the inner circle best coaches in the league based on this series against Spoelstra and whatever else. There's been enough talking about it, but just to rehash it real quick, whether it's the Bucks' half-court offense not having enough activity, not having Giannis in enough pick and rolls, or posting up Giannis enough, or not playing him in Middleton enough minutes, or being reluctant to switch, and whatever the hell else you want to say. So, again, it's a very fascinating situation, to say the least. Just, is there going to be that pressure on the Bucks front office to be like, nope, we need a new coach. We've got one more year to convince Giannis to stay if he does not sign the Supermax. And we got to get a new coach, and then I don't know. The amount of pressure that would be on that coach and that team, whatever it'll look like next season, to perform well, maybe it's necessary. You could convince me of kind of anything, although I think the majority would be on the side of fire Bud, because we're in the moment right now. I mean, do you think Kenny Atkinson would just transform this team into some thing that adjusts better to whatever Spoelstra or Stevens or Nurse or whoever the Bucks may meet in the postseason next year? Yeah, it's a possibility, sure. The next thing to talk about is the roster, improving the roster, all that stuff. They've got some stuff. It's not a lot. I mean, it's Ilyasova and George Hill who are on expirings. Lopez is an expiring. DJ Wilson, DiVincenzo, Wesley Matthews, Giannis' brother, if they would actually have the guts to trade him, which I don't think they would do this upcoming season. So there's some stuff. And if you pair some of that money up with the Pacers pick, you can probably get somebody. I know Chris Paul has been talked about a bit. OKC's pretty fascinating in what they want to do this offseason. I keep using that word, but this situation is so interesting because of Giannis, of course. I mean, I don't know. I don't want this to turn into an OKC video. Do they want to tear it down? Do they want to run it back? They just made it clear that Billy Donovan's not going to be there next season, and perhaps that suggests that they don't want to run it back. You could convince me of many things, but if Chris Paul was available, do I think the Bucks would have enough? I mean, not in terms of personnel, but in terms of draft picks, if they'd be willing to go that hard. I mean, the thing with the Bucks, though, is that a lot of their picks for many years are locked up in protections. They can't trade next year's pick because 2022's is locked up in protections, and it's like that until like 2025. So if the Bucks want to offload a lot of draft picks here and really sweeten the pot for somebody, they'd have to be moving picks that are in the distant future, which may still be fine if it's the difference between you keeping Giannis or not. I mean, we'll get into some more players in a second. I just mentioned Chris Paul because that's the one that's kind of making the rounds right now. I don't know, man. I mean, would you trade a pick 5 years from now, not knowing if you're going to be good because it could help you keep Giannis? I probably would, especially because I could just put protections on it, make it like top 4 or 5 protected or something. Anyway, if we start looking at contracts for next season, I mean, again, the Bucks, between George Hill's contract, which is non-guaranteed in 2022, so it's basically an expiring, Ilyasova, those two together gives you about $18 million next season, unless the Bucks would choose to just let Ilyasova go because his contract is also non-guaranteed, give him a little something to work with, and the free agency market, which is not too big this season. I guess you could put Bledsoe in a move if you wanted to. He's got $16 million himself, so that could help you out a little bit more. You could put him and Ilyasova and get into the 20s. Anyway, we start talking about potential guys that the Bucks could acquire, besides Chris Paul, because that's been talked about enough. I mean, one guy who was on the same team as Chris Paul, Dennis Schroeder. I mean, if we think that there's a chance the Thunder are going to tear the whole thing down, do you think Schroeder would not be available? I think they could certainly use him. He makes $15 million. The Bucks can put that much money together of non-essential guys. I don't think they could get in on the Karis LeVert stuff, because I think if the Nets were going to move LeVert, they're going to do it for an actual guy. They're not going to do it for stuff. There is Otto Porter in Chicago. He might make a little too much for the Bucks, but that's something. Could they get in? Could they get in on Victor Oladipo? I mean, maybe. The Oladipo situation also very interesting. You can convince me of a few things there. I mean, there's Tim Hardaway Jr. There's Terry Rozier if you want to, swing for the bottom of the barrel and maybe somebody really strikes for you or whatever. There's Evan Fournier in Orlando. There's Rudy Gay in San Antonio, $14 million for him. Maybe Will Barton. I don't know. There's a bunch of guys who could do something off the dribble, make a shot for you, whatever, that you could get without giving up someone who you really need to keep on this roster. And that's what the Bucks need. They just need more juice on offense. There's also a guy who I suggested they trade for during the season, Derrick Rose. He makes $7 million. I mean, you could get him just for Ilyasova's money in the Pacers pick. Whether Detroit would want to do that or not, I don't know. I mean, they don't have a lot going for them, and Derrick Rose might be their one attempt at being decent, and the Pistons just want to be the 7th seed, as we all know. If I didn't mention Kelly Oubre in that whole thing, I'll mention him just because his contract is up, and I'm assuming that the Suns will sign him, but again, you never totally know with that type of thing. Well, his contract is up after next season, So yeah, man, I mean, you could probably find some guys that I didn't think of, but that's kind of how it is for the Bucks, and then it's just a matter of how aggressive they want to be and all that good stuff. I guess the high end of a guy they could get besides Chris Paul would be either Drew Holiday or Buddy Hield, but I don't know if they've really got the stuff for anybody that good, unless teams just love the hell out of that Pacers pick, or if the Bucks are just willing to move more picks, and again, they could. In terms of young assets, their only one is Dante DiVincenzo, unless somebody thinks DJ Wilson can be good. I don't know if there's any chance of them moving Middleton, Bledsoe, or Lopez. I think the chances of Middleton moving are about as close to 0 as you can get. Lopez and Bledsoe, I would lean probably not. Even if Bledsoe's not that great, I just feel like he's going to be on the Bucks next year, I mean, if you put Bledsoe's 16.8 with Ilyasova. Like, that gets you to the mid-20s, but then it just comes back to, like, how much of an asset is Bledsoe unless you're just giving a whole bunch of picks to somebody, you know what I mean? So, yeah, that's pretty much what I got. Some decisions to be made. We'll have to see what Giannis wants to do. We'll have to see if Coach Bud is really the guy and if the Bucks will get that desperate that they'll actually fire him. I don't know. And they've got some stuff to make a move. It's not a whole lot. And then, yeah. If there was ever a chance for this Bucks team to be able to make a swing for another top-tier guy, I mean, they might just have to do a little bit of an overpay for somebody who's kind of on the fringe, like an Oladipo that I mentioned earlier. But if not that, then it might not happen because, assuming Giannis signs that extension, they're going to be pretty locked in until, well, maybe about 2024. Then you could do some stuff in free agency again. So for what that's worth, I guess that's not too far away, but it's a little far away, whatever that means. That's it, man. We'll see what happens.